Good evening. My name is Alejandro Reyes. I'm scholar in residence here at the Asia Society Hong Kong Center. So on behalf of Alice Mung, President of the Asia Society Hong Kong Center, let me please, and her team, I'd like to welcome all of you to this session on innovation and entrepreneurship. I'll introduce Marina Chan, our moderator for this evening, but I just wanted to remind you that on February 29, there's a brown bag on the developments in the Munich Security Conference. The speaker will be Chen Li, who is also a scholar in residence here at the Asia Society Hong Kong, but it is only for President Circle members, so this is the time to join the President's Circle, because you could get a special briefing on defense issues from Cheng Li, who was just at the MSC a few days ago. And then there's also an event on the 18th of March. Rick Waters of Eurasia Group, I think he's managing director for China of Eurasia Group, he'll be speaking in conversation with the Asia Society Hong Kong Center chairman, Ronnie Chan. So allow me to introduce our moderator for this evening, Marina Chan, who is Executive Director of MIT Hong Kong Innovation Node. Prior to joining MIT Node, she worked at Merrill Lynch as Vice President of Client Management in the Asian equity business, where she earned her CFA charter. And previous to that, she began her career at Nortel Networks. She serves on the board of Hong Kong Red Cross Schools and is a member of the Dean's Leadership Council at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. So, Marina, I'll leave it to you to moderate the session, take control, and introduce the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I stole your microphone.
Well, thank you very much, Elle, for the kind introduction, and welcome everyone to the Asia Society's special series today. I believe this is the first panel discussion under the business policy domain for Asia Society, and we're really glad to be inviting three very distinguished individuals to explore innovation and entrepreneurship at this critical time, not just in Hong Kong, but for the Asia region. So may I first invite Dr. Pietro Borsano. He is the Deputy Executive Director of Industrial and Global Alliances at the Chulalongkorn University School of Integrated Innovation, and you came all the way to us from Thailand, from Bangkok, so thank you very much. Thank you. And next up, may we invite Ms. Crystal Fok from the Science and Technology Park platform. She is head of the STP platform there. And last but not least, let's invite my previous boss, Dr. Charleston Sin. So he was formerly the executive director at MIT Node and currently the executive director at M-Commerce Online and co-founder of a healthcare startup called Peach BioFirst. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. I'm just gonna reorientate myself first. Okay. So today we're going to really think about how we can build resilient economies in this volatile environment, specifically building stronger, more productive ecosystems for innovation and entrepreneurship, and explore what role can both universities, market enablers, and also the startup venture participants play, and how do the experiences in Southeast Asia compare specifically from a comparative lens between Thailand and Hong Kong. And so the first part I'd like to explore is sort of your takeaways right now in this current lens on the macro landscape for innovation and entrepreneurship. So as you know, when it comes to the triple helix of innovation, it's all about the interactions between industry, academia, and government, and how can they play a role in fostering economic and social development. In particular, innovation and entrepreneurship is well documented as a critical driver for growth. But we can't ignore the fact that currently markets are in quite dire situations, battling post-pandemic recovery with global challenges posed by global supply chain interruptions, inflationary pressures, and also geopolitical tensions. So against this backdrop, what are your observations on recent trends and developments for innovation and entrepreneurship in your respective fields? And so perhaps we can invite our guests from Thailand to start first. Dr. Pietro?
Thank you. So let me give a very short context about the Thai ecosystem. So the first wave of startups in Thailand began around 20 years ago and was mostly foreign driven. So it was primarily entrepreneurs, not from Thailand originally. Many of them were backed by Rocket Internet, which was a venture builder from Germany. Their business model was essentially to somehow like copy successful business, digital business in the US and localize in Southeast Asia. Foodpanda, for example, which I see here in Hong Kong as well, was backed by Rocket Internet. Lazada in e-commerce also. So that was kind of a first wave. Then around like 2012, 13, we have a second wave, and this wave was driven by local entrepreneurs. These local entrepreneurs was mostly elite, so the children of the elite, educated in the West, Harvard, Stanford, MIT, and so on, came back to Thailand and said, okay, let's start up, let's do like working space. And this was probably the major innovation-driven wave of technology startups in Thailand. And this continued until like 2020, 2021, and so on. Actually, our faculty was established in 2019. We are a new faculty in the oldest Thai university, and it was somehow the product of this wave. So we saw this tremendous interest in startups, the first successful cases, and the university decided to set up our faculty. And then COVID hit, and now the landscape kind of changed. So in the past, there were a lot of like incubators and accelerators in Thailand, and this is not the case any longer. So many of them disappeared. Most of innovation now is corporate driven. Thailand is somewhat of an oligopolistic market dominated by very capable corporates. All of them started their own CVC, corporate venture capital fund, and they are investing in startups that advance their strategy. We also see that most of the Thai startups are focused on the domestic market, and I think we will come back to this point later on. But to end this first introduction, I see that the Thai ecosystem is getting more vibrant and more regionalized in a way. In just a couple of hours ago, I was at the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park for an event, a landing event of 8 deep tech startups from Thailand in food, in AI, in energy saving. And these startups are now entering the Hong Kong market. Some of them are already serving Hong Kong clients, like Jardine, for example, Jardine Group. So I think that in the future we will see further integration between Hong Kong, Thailand, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia.
Great, thank you. And given that you've just visited Science Park, I'd love to hear from Crystal. What do you think of the environment right now, and do you see more regional collaboration?
Yes, sure. I think the environment right now is actually because, as you know, the 14th five-year plan announced by the Chinese government, they position Hong Kong as the international INT hub. That's true, if we can make it. But the fact today is, for Science Park, our company numbers raised from 12,000 to 1,200 to 1,700 in just 1 year. The reason is a lot of Chinese company getting to Hong Kong. That's the fact. Most of them are coming from China. I think because of the economy and their readiness, they are now really willing to get out from just the China market. For example, to the Southeast Asia, including the Thailand. So I think Hong Kong could be a landing pad for them to go globalize. Yeah, but the other way around is not that obvious yet, which is from outside to Hong Kong. So that's why I think today is a good news that some company from Thailand. They're trying to explore Hong Kong. But I would say many companies outside Hong Kong, except China, they always ask whether I should put my company in Hong Kong or Singapore. Yeah, so I think that's the key differentiation that we have to develop. Otherwise, the questions always exist. And if we don't have a really good answer for them to choose Hong Kong to be the landing pad, I don't see the other way around, which is making Hong Kong as really an international INT hub. Probably most of the companies will be from the mainland China. Yeah.
And if you were to ask, or if you were to be asked that question, Hong Kong versus China, how might your team,
Sorry?
if
The
you were to
answer.
ask, yeah, how would your team answer that to differentiate?
I would say I don't have a really concrete answer. Usually I will ask, what is the company? What are they looking for? What is their business? For example, if you are a hardware company, and mostly you got to have kind of production, you got the answer yourself. Will you choose Singapore or China? But if you are going for just purely digital, finance, or like crypto, you already got the answer. You don't have to ask me. Otherwise, there's, if I say, oh, you should come to Hong Kong, but if we can't provide what you need, then it's not the right answer to go. Yeah.
And Charleston, you recently entered in the foray of ventures. So could you tell us a little bit more about what support have you received so far? Where do you see more opportunities for intervention into the innovation space to support startups like yourself?
Yes. So let me quickly talk about, I have 3 different roles in entrepreneurship. So first of all, I am in the board of Cyberport, which is, in case you don't familiar, that we are one of the sister organization along with Science Park to do incubation focusing on digitalization. And within Cyberport, as a board member, I also chair the entrepreneurship committee, which we're responsible to give money to support the startup for the business. So each year we fund about 200 plus startup in different area in digitalization. Secondly, I teach innovation and entrepreneurship at Hong Kong U. And the Hong Kong U Business School. I also teach at the Hong Kong U ICB, Institute for China Business, which essentially is we are China entrepreneurship facing. And also I teach at the Polytechnic University on the similar capacity. So, and therefore, with that angle, we are seeing not only entrepreneur coming from the school after they've graduated, but also some of the mid-career one. So on one hand, because of there are excessive supply of experienced business and technology executive that they can actually go start their 3rd career or the 2nd career. With that, I am one of them. So I was in the tech industry for 30 years, and now I'm running about 6 different startups in the area of AI, data, green, PropTech, health data, and all these other area. Now, therefore, I am trying to understand not only from the supply side that we supply funding to organization to start up, but also on the receiving end. What I found it really interesting that recently is the urge to do more innovation and entrepreneurship, especially in Hong Kong, is actually very, very strong. And on top of that, I am working on gathering a PE fund that to do some investment in the Greater Bay Area. And what I found is that later on I will cover more is about the supply chain. So one area that, especially when we work with China company and also China government, they want to secure, using supply chains to secure the supply of technology and also material because of obviously the decoupling between US and China. So therefore, I think that during this time, if I ignore how much Hong Kong is contributed to this activity, but the demand of it is actually very, very high. So therefore, I think depending on when you buy a stock, you want to buy it high or do you want to buy it low. I think this is a good time to buy low, and hopefully of the startup that we support, some of them will actually become much more successful, which is a wish that Crystal and I have every night, and we pray that some of them become 寧德時代, and so that we can be more successful.
Great, thank you. And I think that's a nice segue to the next part, because you talked earlier about, there's a momentum building, an urge for individuals to really try, and adopt this sort of entrepreneurial mindset. So, as we know, riding on recent policies that the government enacted on attracting new talent globally, we are seeing more connectivity and opportunities between universities and also between universities and companies as well. So also links between Hong Kong are also evidently strengthening with Southeast Asia. And in addition, overseas universities, such as MIT, for instance, we've long been establishing links and will continue to do so, tightening those links for strategic collaboration. So how do you, what do you see as the kind of key drivers for talent development in Hong Kong around innovation, and what specific skills are needed? Different industries might, require different skill sets. So I'm just curious, where do you guys see the skill sets, and where do you see the skills gap as well? So perhaps we can maybe start with Crystal first this time. You work a lot with startups.
Yes, I think for talent, what they're looking for is just their own prospect. Yeah, if they feel that, let's say I work in Hong Kong, I'll have a good future, then they will explore. Yeah, it's not just about the funding or other kind of support. Of course, in Hong Kong, if you provide the living allowance, is much better. Yeah, because that's almost the most expensive stuff in Hong Kong. But otherwise, they will think of the opportunity after they stay in Hong Kong, let's say for 1 or 2 years, whether they will still working or they will have their own business. And I think for no matter Science Park and Cyber Park, we provide all this entrepreneur support. Not only start with a company, even start with an individual. We offer the pre-incubation support to all this talent. And the secondly, the gap is actually quite obvious. I think not only for Hong Kong, actually for many places in the world, people are quite focused in their own domain knowledge. Like, even though today we talk about just engineering, mechanical, electrical, electronics, all this actually doesn't matter. The talent that we need today is of multi capability, cross-domain. If Hong Kong is going to restructure our education curriculum or content, something like that, probably we can get a way to go, which is how we build up AI talent. AI talent is not just coding, programming. What they need is how AI is going to apply, even in financial, healthcare, or they need all these cross-domain knowledge to make them really as a talent. No matter where they go, they will get a good chance to really show up their capability. So I think that is what we can do. We are just the science park. We need the government, we need the university, the institute to really realize this kind of change is necessary. Then the talent will come and stay or get whatever they want to do.
Yeah, if I may jump in. So recently I listening to a real case. It's a professor that let me not mention him. He was a MIT graduated originally from Hong Kong. So he came back to Hong Kong after working in the robotics and medical area in US, and came back to Hong Kong to start a new startup company. But in the meantime, he's also a professor at a university. So he mentioned that the experience being a professor and knowing one area versus running a company as a CEO is dramatically different. So because in the past, as a professor or as an inventor, all he need to do is to excel in one area, and one area is sufficient. But as a CEO, he said that he was doing some medical robotics again. He was talking about the entire supply chain, the lighting, the height, the ergonomic design, the UI, and also the software, and the selling cycle and the channel. All of this as a CEO, he need to take care of all of that instead of only one area. That's actually highlight one area that we found that is vastly lacking in Hong Kong. Is someone in when I was in the Silicon Valley, and we call us the product management people, the product people, that how you make one thing into a product where it need to be all encompassing, just like what Crystal talked about, that you need to cover marketing, sales, ergonomic, supply chain, finance, HR, and all of this is actually beyond one area. Now, this is one type of people that we really are lacking in Hong Kong. Most of the technology company in IT area that I know, most of us, like us, usually is from a sales operation, sales point of view. And we are not able to do product management. Not that many people know the end-to-end of how to manage a product life cycle. So those are the people that we believe that we need to get more, probably from Silicon Valley, from China, or even from Europe. Anywhere that is actually welcome to have talent like that. But at school, we don't teach anything like that. Probably the closest one is at the PolyU, they have a product design, but they are not as comprehensive as it should be. So this is one area that I'm trying to develop some material for the course so that my student can actually pick that up as well. And Marina, actually MIT Hong Kong Innovation Node actually have a very comprehensive program to actually do something like. If you're interested, ask Marina.
Thanks for the plug. So interdisciplinary skills is something that I'm hearing common from Crystal and Charleston. And so how about for you, Pietro? How does your team think about these skill sets? And what's unique about that in Thailand?
Well, I must agree completely with this point. In fact, when we created the faculty in our university, just to give a bit of context, is somewhat the equivalent of Hong Kong U for Thailand. So it's the oldest university. I think they were established around the same time, so over 100 years old. Is also the highest ranked university in Thailand. When we created the faculty, the first program that we established was indeed a transdisciplinary program. So it was exactly what you were mentioning. So the idea is to combine engineering, computer programming, and now also stronger AI skills with entrepreneurship, from entrepreneurship mindset to marketing, digital operations, supply chain, and so on. So that was the idea behind it. We launched the program 4 years ago. We did a revision of a program last year to strengthen the AI part of the program. As an associate dean of a faculty, I oversee all the partnerships, so I kind of know every other university in Asia Pacific with similar offerings, and there are very few of them. We find this in Europe, we find this in the US. I think that your definition of like product management program is very precise, right? It's a combination of engineering and business. In Asia Pacific, not so much. There is a little bit of this in Singapore and US, in SMU, Singapore Management University. I just read that Tokyo University in Japan, they want to launch a similar program. I've seen something similar in the mainland, but probably a couple of programs. Here in Hong Kong, we work with many Hong Kong university. HKU does have a transdisciplinary program, which is a Bachelor of Arts and Science, but it's more of a social science, sustainability kind of program. But still, they have a very strong emphasis on this transdisciplinary approach. I do know some students too from that program, and their mindset is different from other students, but still is not too much into the business compared to our program.
So I can tell you a fact that for most of the AI companies in Science Park, what they are lack of is a salesperson. They don't lack of the AI scientists. It's easy to grab from the university. But if you know a little bit technical, but you're able to sell the AI solution, that's the key. Otherwise, for all those staff who make the business, right now, usually just the CEO. That's all. If the CEO is not that capable, they die. Yeah, so I think that's the another chance for us is not just a student from university, but how to upskill the original workforce within a very short period of time. Yeah, upskill is much easier than you grab a new degree or master or PhD. So, for example, a person from finance industry working in the bank, if he or she want to know what is AI, it takes, I feel, from MIT, not maybe less than 3 months. They know what it is. They know how to work together with it. It's good enough because they are very good in their original financial and banking industry. Yeah, so I think upskilling is another way that we build the talent pool as soon as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, this is very true for Thailand. I think that a difference here is that our program is aims more of a elite, like the 1% of the population, to be honest. And I think that these kind of offerings would work well in Hong Kong, in Tokyo, in Singapore, in Shanghai, and so on. But in Thailand, and this is also a pain point in other Southeast Asian markets, still there is a lack of good engineers. So because the education system did not produce so many good engineers like, I guess, Hong Kong, but also the mainland is very strong for this. To the point that actually many Thai startups outsource the engineering to Vietnam. And today, one of the startups that I met, a Thai startup at Hong Kong Science Technology Park, they have AI engineers from Burma, from Myanmar, which is a bit of, like Myanmar is in a very challenging situation, and it has always been, in the past 50 years, the poorest economy in Southeast Asia. Yet, we do have some very good, talented students, very resilient students. And the same goes for Vietnam. If you look at the ranking, Vietnam is one of the education system with the most resilient students. So this is, I would say, a key difference with Hong Kong. We still need good engineers. So if you have some good engineers, please send them over to Thailand. Yes, we need them. And they get a good salary. Not as good as Hong Kong, but they get like double the salary than equivalent engineer.
They might get other fringe benefits, right?
Yes, yes. Plus, accommodation is not an issue, right? Yeah, we were like mentioning like a parking space in Hong Kong, you can get a nice condominium in Bangkok, right? So it's
So that's interesting because we talked about how do you groom talent domestically through more traditional educational interventions, maybe getting them exposed to apprenticeships for upskilling, getting kind of more project management based skill sets. But at the same time, we're also seeing potential opportunities to look at the region, and there's comparative advantages to different populations in the talent pool there. So how do you see that interaction coming about? So maybe there might be pockets of, like you mentioned, a lot of the software services may be now outsourced to Vietnam. A few years ago, we already saw a lot of movement from manufacturing to Vietnam. So I'm just curious, what do you think about comparative advantages of different countries within Asia?
I would say you're right. Back to my first sharing, what is the reason that people choose Hong Kong? That's the key. So for me, always is the government policy. Yeah, that's also the weakling point from Singapore as well, because they got a lot of government policy which makes Singapore to be distinguished. For Hong Kong, I would say right now we have two important policy just announced 1 or 2 years. The first one is on virtual asset. Yeah, because like in China, they already say that virtual asset is not a good move if you are within China. But Hong Kong is a place that you can work around for virtual asset. So virtual asset is not just the asset itself, it's how to make the economy connect between China and outside China. So this is one point that I think if you're interested, you should looking into deeply. And the second one is really recently, the cross-boundary data. Data itself is almost the basic component and the key component for most of the INT development from now on. But in China, they got massive data, but no one can get access to it unless you are in China, Right now, Hong Kong is the almost one of the two places. Hong Kong and Macau is the place that within the GBA new policy, which is for cross-boundary data. So all this data from China, outside China, you can stay just within Hong Kong and Macau. You can't go anywhere else. So if this is what you're looking for, data is the key. So I think these two policies will make Hong Kong to be more special for those companies who need data and policy support.
Point.
Well, so I think that from a Thai perspective, okay, we see a lot of investment coming from the mainland, like in manufacturing. Actually, we were discussing coming here about like the automotive industry. Thailand is one of the largest industry in Thailand is automotive, makes up to 8% roughly of the GDP. Thailand initially developed the automotive sector with the Japanese car makers in the 90s when the Germans came in, and now it's the time of the Chinese EVs. And in fact, you will see many more Chinese EV in Bangkok or in Thailand compared to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is very European in a way. I mean, it looks like being back to Europe when I look at the cars. So this is definitely a massive trend. I think that mainland is now among like top. If it's not top 2, it's like top 3 main investors to Thailand, together with the USA and with Japan. And I think the same is anecdotal, but also in Vietnam. I mean, we were in Vietnam with Al in December, where there were a lot of Chinese companies relocating to Vietnam. I also want to touch on a point that Crystal made a couple of times. So Singapore versus Hong Kong. In my capacity, I'm also a bit of a salesman, because I need to sell to our startups in Bangkok, whether to expand into Hong Kong or Singapore or join competition hackathons in other countries, and also for exchange of students. So honestly, Singapore is an evergreen. It's like we must say this. Like there is a very good media coverage of Singapore, right? So it's very easy to sell. Everyone would like to go to Singapore. For Hong Kong, we had to do a bit more of efforts, and I guess it's also because mainstream media, especially Western media, do not help that much. And many times, this media coverage is also somewhat biased, right? It does not reflect the reality. But I see a lot of new initiative, for example, with Hackathon Plus, that we co-organized for Thailand with Hong Kong Science Technology Park for the first year. So we got some Thai startups, also some of our student startups joining the Hackathon Plus, which is a startup competition in Hong Kong, mainland, and now also in Southeast Asia. We also co-organize with Hong Kong CTU, the Tech 300 startup. This is an initiative by CTU to create 300 startups by 2025. It's a very ambitious and I would say a great initiative. It's really a great example on how to do startup commercialization, technology commercialization. So basically CTU promoted this to match the intellectual property created by their researchers with startup companies. And I think this is also what you mentioned earlier, right? But for researchers, it's difficult to do commercialization. And now we are matching their intellectual property with startup companies outside of Hong Kong. This was done last year for the very first time. And again, we got more than 60 startups applying for this, 25 being nominated by us, and 3 selected by CTU. 2 of them are going to be in the finale next month in April. They will receive also equity investment, because this is the other great feature of this competition. They receive equity investment from the venture capital fund of CTU. So I think that these initiatives are really changing the perception in startups about Hong Kong. And we say, okay, Hong Kong is still the place to do business. So I welcome many more of these initiatives. So I think they're really nailing in the perception of Hong Kong.
And Sorry, and riding on Crystal's point, I'd love to ask Charleston on the data part, because I think you mentioned one of the value propositions from Pietro's perspective for Thai startups could be this access to this treasure trove of connectivity to data. So what do you think of that, Charleston?
So I personally work on the data area for the last 5-6 years, and I think that this is one of the opportunity that we have to go capture. So there's two reasons of it. Number one is now everyone talk about AI, ChatGPT, right? And we all know that AI and ChatGPT depends on data. Now, people are talking about AI governance, right? AI protection. But in order to do AI governance and protection, you have to have data governance and protection. Without data governance protection, AI protection is meaningless. So therefore, this is an opportunity for Hong Kong to grab to be the data center, to the center of the data, collecting data in Hong Kong. So that's one. Secondly is I am also sitting in hospital authority on the IT side, right? So, and this is one opportunity that we found it very interesting. Hong Kong Hospital Authority has collect patients' record for last 30 years with 10 million people. 10 million people in Hong Kong the last 30 years. And this is one of the best EHR, electronic health record data in the world. All right, probably anyone compare with it is Israel and also Singapore. Better than China, better than Taiwan, better than US, as probably as good as, maybe better than UK and also Australia. So therefore, data is that Hong Kong has a special place and also has a special location in the loop, Hoto, that we can actually have access of the China data and also access of the Hong Kong data. And just picture that, right? For the last 3 years, China has been collecting people behavior and health data for the last 3 years because of COVID. And they have billions and tens of billions of data. Hong Kong has a horizontal 10 years of data. If you map this pattern recognition from vertical into the horizontal, you can do a lot of biomarker statistic comparison. So therefore, I have a startup to do health data. And also Crystal is one of the leading figures in Hong Kong working with the hospital authority to put data, health data, to make use of it. Your question is whether we can actually protect the data, whether we can have enhanced the privacy data. I can tell you that from technology point of view, all can be done. It is now the willingness, which is most important, and also whether the government policy to support that. And I think Crystal has been doing, and Science Park has been doing some very important work to open up this. Just imagine that, right? If all this data is being available for all the healthcare research in Hong Kong, and then the power of it is just going through the roof. And I just been in the California, Silicon Valley, attending a precision medicine conference. And people love Hong Kong to have access of the Hong Kong data. And if we can do that, we are sitting on a treasure that we did not know what to do with it. And we have to do something about it with the support of Crystal and the other.
I think that's true, really true, because if you are going to access data over the world, the database that you can really use money to buy is just from European. Imagine that where is the most population in the world? China and India. All these are Asian population. We don't have any data set available for such kind of research because we just don't have it. Yeah. But the business in the future is in China and India. Yeah. So which means that if we can get that data pool ready as soon as possible and leverage the data for whatever purpose, that is the future business. And also not only the data, when we talk about data, people will talk about cybersecurity and other kind of like privacy computing, other kind of many new technology that to ensure that when people willing to offer the data, we protect them in a proper way. So it's just not one single technology, it's just a massive technology together to make people willing to share, and we can use the data for our own purpose. And I believe that this is really a great opportunity for any company in Hong Kong. Yeah.
And where are we in that process, and in terms of obstacles to enable us to, really achieve that level of data access while preserving privacy and protection?
So let me talk about the optical first. So because of the people who actually manage the data on your behalf is hospital authority, right? And all this data, because of, in order for us to use this data for research purpose, we need your consent. So, and how do I get the consent? How do I protect you that at any time that anyone touch your data, see your data, that I give you a track and trace capability, right? You will receive an email, a message saying that, oh, someone is using your data to do research, that you can do a track and trace. And all of this is, the most important part is not the technology, it's the people willingness to do that. Having said that, a very good health clinical study does not require more than 10,000 samples. 1,500 is already very good. So therefore, this create an opportunity for us. And just imagine that, right? With the AI and ChatGPT, I can combine health data together with behavioral data. How many 肥豬肉 I eat, therefore I get this, right? And then understand my pattern of exercising will help to develop the biomarker so that I can do a better prediction of my health. All of this can be done. Technology is there. It's just that whether I am willing, or along with another 1,500 people, is willing to share my data, my protected, desensitized data, so that let the research company to do research on it. That is something that we think that is the mindset. It has to be properly documented and understood. Opportunity.
I think the obstacle is always there, but actually we got quite a few ways to get around. That's the truth, because even though the privacy, whatever, the consent, actually could be directly from the data owner. Right now, we are always asking consent from the data custodian. If I'm the custodian, why do I need to take the risk to share your data to someone else? But if you are the data owner and you're willing to share your data for some purpose which you agree, you offer the consent directly from yourself. So this is one way that we cannot bypass, but allow the data provider to get a direct connection with the data consumer. That's the one way. The second way is because you are the data owner. Wherever you put your data, bring your data, transfer your data is fine. By law, it's totally fine. Which means that if I get a medical check in a hospital in China or Shenzhen, if I want to say I want to get back my report, it's totally fine. You get your report. And then I want to go Thailand and upload the report to your hospital, totally fine, because I'm the data owner. But the only issue is the trustworthiness. Because I download it from you, I can erase something, add something, and then I upload it to you. Will you trust me? Maybe not. Yeah, so there are some new technology to enable that every single data, they will have their own DNA. If the data have its own DNA, you just need to ensure that the DNA is there. And then if there's any change, you will know that. So all these are just about the underlying technology. It's not an issue. The issue is still the data provider has to be well educated. And then the world will also change. Yeah.
And also looking south, let's say a company that lands in Hong Kong is interested to tap into the Southeast Asian market, perhaps go to Thailand. What is the environment there for them in terms of data access?
Well, for sure it's not as sophisticated as Hong Kong yet, but there is much more awareness about data and data security, especially over the last 3-4 years. So many companies have invested in data security. Also, university are including cybersecurity as one of the mandatory courses. In my operation management course, I do have a few lectures specifically on cybersecurity. In now, let's say one of a mandatory part of like any startup acceleration program is, okay, before you go online with your application, make sure that your cybersecurity is in place. So I would say that in terms of mindset, this like 5 years ago was like, oh, never mind, it's no one was concerned about it. Now even startups are like they really care about it. There have been also some regulatory improvement. So there is a privacy legislation that was enacted 2 years ago. It was postponed many times because it was quite heavy on the regulatory side. It was modeled after the GDPR in Europe. So of course, like there was a lot of resistance from Thai conglomerates not to enact this legislation. So originally, they wanted to issue this in 2018 or so, and then happened only during the pandemic. But now this is mandatory. We also updated all our data collection in the university, so we are much more careful now about this. So this is one point about data. So I would say like it's not the Far West any longer. So and this is across the board. So it's in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and so on, and of course Singapore. But another point about data is also like the data centers. So like cloud data centers. So there are many more cloud providers. The very first one were in Singapore, but now Thailand is known as a data center too. The first one to set up 2 data centers were Huawei. Huawei is also the provider of a 5G technology in Thailand. Thailand was the first country in Southeast Asia, and I want to emphasize this. We leapfrog Singapore for once. So we implemented 5G ahead of Singapore through Huawei. So almost, like one of the very few times that Thailand was ahead of Singapore. And now also AWS is investing for a data center in Thailand. Recently, AWS, Amazon Web Services, released their investment plans for Thailand, $5 billion USD investment in the coming 15 years. So we will see a lot more competition also in this, and more choices for corporate startups and so on. And your point was also for foreign companies or foreign startups entering into the Thai market. So this is a very easy question to answer if you are Hong Kong, right? Because it's very easy to enter into Hong Kong. You can set up your company online. And this is still not the case for Thailand. However, there is a government agency, which is the Board of Investment of Thailand. Shortened is a BOI. The BOI is providing, let's say, special license for foreign companies bringing technology, digital technology, deep tech, and so on into the country. So if you apply for this license, then you can own 100% of a business, even though you're a foreigner. And this is because foreigners are not allowed to operate many businesses in Thailand unless they get this special investment promotion. But I would say every startup would qualify for this investment promotion. More recently, Thailand also tried to get a bit of business from Singapore, and they issue this new regulation for regional headquarters. So this is to get like companies that instead of setting up a regional headquarters in Singapore, they want to set up in Thailand. And I would say that now it's picking up a bit. So there are a few companies that are relocating to Bangkok. And one reason is cost of, not the cost of doing business in Singapore, the cost of living and having an office in Singapore. So I see that now there is more demand for this. So Electrolux, a couple of months ago, they decided to shut down the operations in Singapore and relocate everything into Bangkok. So this is something that is happening, and I think that we will see more of this in the coming years, which is good because then there could be some spillover effect to the startup ecosystem as well.
Yep. So in terms of funding cost, having a business model that's sustainable, it really relies on investment, so capital and funding. So I'd love to shift the conversation to that. Where do you see the appetite for funding coming from? What type of sources? Has there been obviously globally there's been a shrinkage in venture capital funding. And, where do you see the government play a part in this? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I have to say that it's tough. So for those of you actually control family office, that you may want to allocate, like please try to consider allocate some money to invest in early stage startup. And you never know,寧德時代 can come come up very soon. So if you're interested in invest, please let me know.
Over in Thailand.
All right. I think here I would like to cast a light on one Hong Kong policy, which is the Raise Plus scheme, which is a terrific initiative. I've been appointed by Hong Kong government in December to evaluate projects under the Raise Plus scheme. I happened to evaluate a project by Hong Kong PolyU professor and researchers last month, which was about like a retina device improvement, the same behind like the Vision Pro by Apple, which apparently even the Vision Pro by Apple still give a lot of like headache when you use it more than 15 or 20 minutes. So this solution is specifically to improve metaverse devices. So I would like to see something like this in Thailand too. I think it's a great initiative to push for technology commercialization from university. In Thailand, the ecosystem, when it comes to early stage investment, is still, I would say, like challenging. Investment in technology startup in Thailand in 2021 were around 500 million USD. Decreased a little in 2022, in 2023, but were like partial data were around 50 million USD, so very low. There are initiatives by the government. There are many government agencies. There is the equivalent of a science park in Thailand too. There is NIA, which is the National Innovation Agency, targeting early stage startup. There is DIPA, which is another government agency for more grown-up startups. There is a plan to nurture up to 10,000 startups by 2027 with government investment up to 138 million USD. But still, it's not really, like if you look at like the investment by Amazon, 5 billion in 15 years, like it's really nothing. So I would say like investment are still needed. There are also some regulatory issues in Thailand when it comes to VC. So it's difficult to have like a fund, so you need to actually set up a company. So there are like regulatory limitations. And also like a limited liability partnership, even though it is regulated by Civil and Commercial Code of Thailand, but still is not widely used because it's actually quite cumbersome. So most of VC are actually based on a limited liability partnership, like with limited partners and the general partners, and this is not suitable for Thailand. So there are many regulatory challenges. So that's why I usually encourage our startup to go incorporate in Hong Kong or in Singapore, because then it's easier to get access to early stage funding in Hong Kong and Singapore. Plus, it's also better. Let's say legal system, so common law jurisdictions, so the legal system is better.
I think I saw a synergy between you two, because Raise First is a really good program, but the funding directly to the research team within the university. The technical skills is perfect, but something of course missing. Every one of us know that they don't have the business mindset. They don't know how to tap into the market. They don't know how to even do a pilot production. That's all. But if you are really eager for early stage investment, why not? They got the IP, proven, technically proven. But business-wise, there's still a gap. If you are willing to fill the gap because you buy in their technology, that's the synergy. Yeah, Raise Plus is good in some way, but they also need help. Yeah, so that's why I think it is an opportunity for investors as well.
Okay, wonderful. So we've covered today about talent, about capital, about potential synergies, partnerships with that sort of in an age of AI. Would love to now pass that over to the audience if you guys have any Q&A. And if you do, please feel free to come up to the mic at the front. Any questions? Yes, at the back. Al.
Hi, thank you very much. If I might just introduce geography into this. In understanding innovation ecosystems, there's always, of course, collaboration, which you've talked about, but also competition, which you've talked about. I'm wondering if the panelists could talk a bit about the competition collaboration dynamics with the Greater Bay Area, because of course outside world says, well, Hong Kong and Shenzhen, they're competing, and Shenzhen was favored and all that sort of thing. And particularly for Pietro, if you could talk about the ASEAN kind of competition collaboration dynamics, because is that actually possible? I mean, Thailand and the Greater Mekong area is something that people have talked about. We talked about the other day about the Singapore, Johor area and those kinds of geographic collaboration clusters, if you will. Thanks.
Thank you for your question. Would you like to start first, Pietro?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question with a lot of themes behind the question. So I think that between Thailand and Hong Kong and the GBA, I actually see a lot of complementarity, partnership opportunities, not really competition as much. Actually, what I see is that startups can incorporate Hong Kong, receive funding in Hong Kong, or for Hong Kong startup, like for example, like IP from university. When it comes to scaling up, Thailand could be actually a nice option. It's a market with 69 million people. It's a very sophisticated market. In Southeast Asia, I would say is the go-to market when you look for consumers, because differently from the mainland, Thailand has exactly the opposite issue compared to the mainland. So it's like over debt, household debt. So meaning that people love to buy and they can't stop buying, which is the opposite issue when the mainland is trying to push for more like consumption. So it's really a consumption-driven economy. 40 million people only living in Bangkok. So I think that from this perspective, it's a good market. It's actually better than Malaysia, because Malaysia is the second most advanced economy in ASEAN, but is a smaller market. It's roughly 30 million people in a much, like also widespread area, right? So KL is around 7 million people. In Singapore is, of course, like a smaller market. So Thailand, from that perspective, makes a lot of sense for the startups. From the Thai perspective, when we look at Hong Kong, we like the idea of a GBA, because in the GBA, there are many advanced technology companies, right? You think of the Shenzhen tech companies, Huawei, and so on. So there is an interest in this kind of cooperation. If we step back a little bit and we get into geopolitics also, Thailand is neutral. So we are happy to cooperate with US, with Europe, with China. So I think that Thai government navigated the challenges of a recent tension rather well. And I hope we're doing the same as a university. So we cooperate with pretty much everyone, and I think that it's a win-win for Thailand. And Thailand is a small country, so we cannot take sides too much, right? So and I think this is, resonate in Thai society as well.
So let me, because I'm familiar with the GBA, so let me quickly make one point. Hong Kong is very heavily depends on governments R&D and research center and the university. But Shenzhen is actually quite opposite, right? Shenzhen has a lot of tech company, and they have their own R&D center, from Tencent to BRD to MyRay, and they all have their own research team, and that's why they are producing quite a number of products people and also the real R&D engineer. That actually is a key advantage that Shenzhen has. And if you look at all the reports, Shenzhen is always ranked as the one of the top three. Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen are the top R&D area that is actually being centered into it. However, from manufacturing point of view, Dongguan, Weizhou, Foshan, and also Zhongshan are the belt of it is really the manufacturing base of it. So Dongguan used to be the factory of the world, right? Therefore, Dongguan has excessive capacity of manufacturing space and capability. That actually in that Weizhou, Dongguan, Foshan, Zhongshan, that's the belt. But Guangzhou is actually positioned quite different. They position that as the trade area. In particular, they have two very, actually, it's not two, three actually very good universities. Zhongshan, Huanan Leikong, and also Guangdong Gongye. So these are the university base as well. So therefore, in a way that people will, definitely there's some competition. But I think that central government, Government is trying to use the GBA to actually define the role for all of them. But if you look at the GBA, I think that there's still a lot of opportunity, that which go back to one of my original message. We need to secure the supply chain, material, people, and also technology. So 源頭創新 source, that is China was trying to protect that. And therefore, it gives us an opportunity for innovation and R&D and engineer. Yet, one thing that I think Hong Kong has definite advantage is the number of top university in the world, and also student. Now, in my class, in the undergraduate class in Hong Kong U, I teach entrepreneurship. I have 60 students, roughly about 20 of them from international. Europe, Brazil, Australia, Thailand, you name Korea, you name it. 1/3 of it is actually from China. 1/3 of it is actually in Hong Kong. I also teach PolyU a master program. 80% of the class is from China. Now, and coming this year, undergraduate program of the UGC undergraduate program, they are allowed to increase the number of enrollment of the foreign student, especially Chinese student, from 20 to 40. It's actually very, very good strategy to attract and bring the talents back to Hong Kong. I was a Canadian, I was in Hong Kong born, I was a Canadian foreign student. And I met my wife in Canada, right? And therefore, we work in Canada and US for a while. That is actually one of the best strategy that I think. In particular, recently, we heard that 專才計劃. So sometimes we heard that people from North China moved to Shenzhen. In the past, they want to move to Shenzhen, but now they move to Hong Kong. Because they move to Hong Kong, they can go back to Shenzhen. So those are the strategy that I think education and also attracting talent coming to Hong Kong is the right strategy. At the end of the day, Hong Kong is the people international area that we have to protect our international so that we can get the best diversified talents coming to Hong Kong. And if we do that, execute it well, and we'll have a lot of foreign students coming to Hong Kong, then Hong Kong will be very different from what we are as of now.
Ursula, would you have anything to add?
Actually, my answer is simple. I will take the cross-boundary data as an example. As I said, only 2 points that they could get access, Hong Kong or Macau. So no competition. They have to collaborate with either Hong Kong or Macau. What their competitor? For Shenzhen, their competitor is Guangzhou. For Guangzhou, their competitor may be Beijing or Shanghai. All these are internal competition. And this is a chance for Hong Kong. You can pick whether you would like to work with Shenzhen or Guangzhou. Depends. So I think competition versus collaboration always exists. but how to pick your partner is the most important thing. Yeah, so I think we have to look much more into different initiative and opportunity, and then we could pick our partner to win the competition. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more question? Yes. Oh, you can wait for the mic to come. Thanks.
So, you know, in talking to a few people that kind of work in the tech space, and I do ask them the same question, like, you know, Hong Kong versus Greater Bay Area, kind of what's Hong Kong's advantage? And the message that I heard a few times was, Hong Kong is a great place to base your very expensive international talent, because the quality of life is high, it's easier to get visas here still than mainland China. So if you have a research scientist who's very expensive and you got to put him somewhere nice, you put him here. Now, while it's nice to hear that Hong Kong is still valuable in that respect versus China, that doesn't necessarily say a lot about Hong Kong's vibrancy as a tech hub. So I guess how do you, I guess, to kind of, how does Hong Kong kind of, I guess, overcome that? Like, in terms of really becoming a center, like, to kind of revive its own vitality as a center for innovation, and not just a place where you'll, you know, you stick your scientists because it's a nice place to live.
Crystal, you can take that.
I think it's a good point. If you just put something within Hong Kong, it doesn't make sense. And also we don't gain the GDP at all. Yeah. So I think depend on the R&D and technology that you really have in mind. This morning we met a really big company in digital content creation. Yeah. And they are also in the process in chosen within Hong Kong, GBA, and Singapore. And after our discussion, they know why Hong Kong. They are going to put almost all the resources in Hong Kong. Yeah, because not only the talent itself, talent is the key, one of the key. The second one is the overall support. Together from the government, from the park, and also from the industry. Yeah, they need to gain all this support, because they are not only working in R&D. Imagine that they have the AI content, the 3D content for over 30 years. It's actually an asset for the whole company. But they're not using this asset to make money right now. They are just providing service. But if Hong Kong allow them to make it as an asset to earn another batch of money, that's the attraction. So how they make the money is to tokenize their IP, tokenize their content, which is allowed in Hong Kong, not in China. Once you tokenize your 3D content in the past 30 years, you tokenize your IP for the past 30 years, it's totally another world for them. That is an investment world, which is Hong Kong is the best. No one will say no. So if you think about business and think about opportunity, don't think just about your existing product and service, because that's already the end. Yeah, if we could explore what else, that's the opportunity that maybe Hong Kong is a best place for them to kickstart. Yeah, and the reason that we tap into this topic is because of the CBDC. Yeah, Hong Kong allow you to tokenize the asset, but where is the money? Mostly from China. And China want to get CBDC out from China. So if you can imagine the whole supply chain of money or asset, then we can think of a new world together. Yeah.
So definitely ease of capital flows would be one of the keys. Great. Any more questions? One more. Okay, if not, then please join me in a big round of applause to Pietro Borsano, Crystal Fok, and Charleston Sin for a very engaging discussion around innovation and entrepreneurship. So thank you for joining us, and have a great evening. Thank you.